What is up, YouTube? It is your boy, your poet, KendrykYoungblood. It has been a long time since I did a poetry lesson. Don't get me wrong, I love my reactions. They're very fun, but sometimes your boy just likes to teach, all right? And this lesson right here is called the Infinity Stones of Poetry. Before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of what we're discussing, you need to first know what I mean by the Infinity Stones. The Infinity Stones are artifacts from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were formed during the birth of the universe and each grant a wielder incredible abilities. In Marvel, the villain Thanos became more powerful with each stone he added to his Infinity Gauntlet. There are 6 stones in total: the Space Stone, the Reality Stone, the Power Stone, the Mind Stone, the Time Stone, and the Soul Stone. With the power of all 6, Thanos became an all-powerful being who could alter the universe with the snap of his fingers.
You should have gone for the head.
I'll explain each of these stones' fictional abilities and show how you can apply them to your poetry so that your art can reach its full potential. Keep in mind that you don't have to use just one stone per poem. You can use multiple in any combination of your choosing. I will provide an application of these stones for both written poetry and spoken word poetry.
What'd you do?
The Space Stone allows its user to manipulate space any way they see fit. Its most basic powers allow one to teleport themselves, other people, and objects to any place they can picture in their mind, regardless of distance or preventive measures like walls that might stand in the way. For written poetry, it reminds you to be intentional about selecting the poem's form, the spacing between words, and the length of lines. This allows you to control where the eyes of readers will travel on the page and the speed at which their eyes travel from start to finish. For spoken word poetry, it reminds you to take up space on stage and make optimal use of your facial expressions and choreography.
But I'm not that focused. 10 tabs open, hoping my problems can be resolved with a 1600 by 1700 revolution. This is a problem with this evolution doubled over. We used to sit in treetops till we swung down to stand upright, then someone slipped a disc. Now we're doubled over at desktops.
I don't want to open her mouth when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked. When she said she loved me, her mouth would curl up at the edges. At night, she'd lay in bed and watch me turn all the lights off and on and 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 off. She'd close her eyes and imagine that days and nights were just passing in front of her.
There goes the extrovert who wants everyone to love me by the first handshake. I see the introvert who wants to go home when she walks off the stage. My ego is actually 8 Meg the Stallions twerking in the back like, bitch, you the shit. But my self-esteem is Tina Belcher from Bob's Burgers, like, but what if you're not? They tell me to take up space. They do not see that I am more than they could ever fathom.
The Mind Stone allows its user to read minds and control the mind of others. For both written and spoken word poetry, it reminds you to use wordplay and other poetic techniques that stimulate your audience's minds and elicit an emotional response. It also reminds you to be mindful of who your audience is so that you can select the right poem to connect with them.
Because I gotta come to terms with the fact that my sister ain't never coming back. And that's the cost of love. Caring for someone so much that you can't imagine living life without them. Staring at a grave like, how about I trade my 6 feet for yours, but that's not real.
Where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is.
Tell me, how blessed are we to have tragedy so small it can fit on the tips of our tongues? When Evan lost his legs, he was speechless. When my cousin was assaulted, she didn't speak for 48 hours. When my uncle was murdered, we had to find a search party to find my father's voice. Most people have no idea that tragedy and silence often have the exact same address.
Now, reality can be whatever I want.
The reality stone allows its user to alter reality as one pleases and break the laws of logic and physics. For written and spoken word poetry, it reminds you to use vivid metaphors and hyperbole to stretch the imagination of your audience instead of always communicating literally.
Mom says try counting sheep, but my mind can only count reasons to stay awake, so I go for walks. But my stuttering kneecaps clank like silver spoons held in strong arms with loose wrists. They ring in my ears like clumsy church bells, reminding me I am sleepwalking on an ocean of happiness I cannot baptize myself in. Mom.
What happens to a black girl who is too anxious to ever feel like magic? Can she still fly? Can she still be fly with wings that tremble? Can she forget the lifestyle of an ant, that feeling that no matter what she does, she is in danger of being crushed? And my anxiety doesn't like to be made into metaphors, but what I'm trying to say is she is constantly reminding me of how easy I am to crush.
Remind them they are merely specks of dust in the vastness of your presence, and when the bullies come with their meteor shower of insults aiming to hit you at your core, swing your Milky Way arms to the bridge of their nose so they will always know that you are the Big Bang your mother and I have been waiting for, you walking constellation, you light-speed traveler, you rocket of hope. I've gone on with this metaphor for too long, I know, but...
The Power Stone allows its user to create and manipulate massive amounts of energy. For written poetry, it reminds you to use something called poetry energy, a term coined by Grant Clouser. He states that poetry energy is the push and pull you feel as a reader when you're progressing through a poem. It's the pull the poem exerts on you to keep reading, and the push it enacts on your response. Energy makes you want to finish the poem. Examples of poetry energy you can utilize in your writing would be suspense, tension, subverting expectations, aka plot twists. For spoken word poetry, it reminds you to command attention through call and response engagement with the audience, and both projecting and manipulating your voice as needed.
I remember it all and how I loved it anyway. Like when Tonisha told me that guy was her aunt's boyfriend and not hers, or when my ex-wife handed me the phone so I could have a conversation with the guy I was sharing her fucking orgasms with. I remember it all and how I love anyway, and I just get scared. What am I supposed to teach my son about love?
The game is Simon Says.
You know how it goes.
When Simon says do an action, you do an action. But you're only supposed to do an action if Simon says. Ready? Simon says, raise your right hand. Simon says, put your right hand down. Simon says, raise your left hand. Put your left hand down.
Oh, Simon didn't say. Y'all look good. Okay, Simon says, put your left hand down now. Cross your arms.
No. Simon didn't say cross your arms. You need to...
The first day I realized I was black. It was 2000. We had just learned about blacks for the first time in second grade. At recess, all the white kids chased me into the wood chanting slave. My mother said I refused to come out for 3 hours. Said she thinks I was lost in the trees, but I just needed to be closer to my roots.
As a woman, having a boyfriend is a battle.
The Time Stone grants its user total control over the past, present, and future. Its most basic ability gives its user visions of possible futures and the power to stop and rewind time. In both written and spoken word poetry, it reminds you to watch out for verb tense errors, anachronisms, and anachronies in your work. Now for some clarification on what those words mean, verb tense errors occur when the verb tense abruptly changes in the middle of a sentence. An example of this would be, I walked to the store and I bought milk. Walk is a present tense verb. Bought is a past tense verb. The verb tense error occurred because the two verbs in the sentence do not have the same tense. Anachronism is a chronological inconsistency, a juxtaposition of people, events, objects, language terms, and customs from different time periods. An example of this would be making the speaker of a poem an American slave in the 1800s who uses modern-day African-American vernacular English.
I don't care what plantation I end up on, I'm straight staging a revolt in this mother.
Hells yeah. Anachrony is a discrepancy between the order of events in a story and the order in which they are presented in the plot. Not all anachrony is bad, though. Sometimes it can be used intentionally. An example of an intentional anachrony would be flashbacks or flash forwards. An example of an anachrony that might be done in error would be mentioning in the poem that a baby's parents died a year before the baby was born, when you really meant to say a year after the baby was born.
She was 8 years old. Our first day of grade 3 when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground where we found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse.
21. My father is run over by a car. He's passed out in the road with a blood alcohol content 4 times the legal limit. I do not cry. 4 months later, the nurses lose his pulse, and I wonder whose life flashed before his eyes. Rewinding VHS tapes, old home videos. 20. 19, I haven't brought a friend home in 4 years. 18, my mother sips the word divorce, her mouth curls.
1. Men don't cry because women have monopoly over the tears, because emotions are just another cover-up for weakness. Well, guess what? When Kevin failed in 5th grade, he didn't cry. When Kevin's mother left him, he didn't cry. When Kevin's girlfriend died, he didn't cry. When Kevin committed suicide, he wondered who would cry.
Daughter.
And finally, we have the Soul Stone. The Soul Stone has the ability to manipulate and trap souls, in addition to allowing the user to resurrect and conjure the spiritual representation of the living and even the dead. For both written and spoken word poetry, it reminds you to study artists who came before you, to either use their techniques or reference their work. A poetry form that is heavily dependent on the Soul Stone would be after poems, and a poetic device that is heavily dependent on the Soul Stone would be allusions. After poems are poems made in conversation with or in the style of another artist's poem. Allusions are simply references to someone else's work.
I have this bad habit of conflating humility with low self-esteem. Clouding modesty and self-deprecating comments, being weary of my gift and my ego taking more space than they've been allotted. They tell me to take up space. And the poet in me tries to make herself a galaxy. But the depression says you were not even a star in your own show, so what makes you think you can reach those kinds of heights? They do
You
not.
got all that sass in your speech and a bit of twang in your talk.
Leviosa, not Leviosa. Who you trying to play, sis? We hear that southern drawl. You turn time in your hands, make minutes out of milliseconds. Ain't that like a black girl?
To find hours in a day when no one else would know to look. Holding boys in your back from book 1 to movie 8 with no thank you?
They would not be alive, and Ron does not deserve you, period.
And all that he did, I mean, just by his words, he spoke the whole universe into existence. No infinity stones is needed. His mind became comprehended. He breathed life into the nostril of man, and man became living soul. Whatever he speaks becomes our reality. He is all powerful, that even the winds and waves obey his every command. He is the one to tell time to tick again, and yet he, that I, was worth saving.
The best poems often utilize multiple infinity stones simultaneously for even greater effect. As a matter of fact, you may have noticed that in some of the previous clips I showed, there may have been other stones being used in conjunction with the major one I singled out. Here are some clips that present multiple stones being used at the same time.
Cause ain't nobody here to spar with you. Ain't no throwing hands at a gun show. You only guaranteed one shot. Better make sure every time you pull it's a headshot. No deadlock on the shot clock. You got 3 minutes on the stopwatch, so make every word count. Talk to the metaphor like you've met before. Picture the imagery to create synergy with the simile. Use the hyperbole to color your story. Even if the allegory be a little gory, there is glory after this. And as for the artist,
Because you can't get a win when you're the Browns. Whether in Cleveland or LA, they'll charge us wherever we touch down. When you know your blood is royal, bleeding purple, they'll ask what you're raving about. You get to speaking like a panther, you'll see hawks, and in Oakland, they'll be raiding your house. See the racists rolling Colts. So giant, you Tennessee Titans bolt from their powers like your revolution is a cardinal sin. These cowboys will always pack us in coffins, and you can't say nothing, no matter how many dead children Chicago bears. But because
I remember hating myself at the age of 7. Journals filled to the brim with criticisms by 8. I had enough pages to stitch them into wings, to fly close enough to the sun to see my tears turn to steam, felt the wax burn on my shoulders and mold into thick skin. I was 9 when I wanted to die. 13 when I found a solution, figured if I could cut my legs enough, gravity would let me go. When it didn't,
I say I shine so bright that I wake up the sun, the talented, gifted, and anointed one. So when you see me shining, just shine right back. Cause I like it when you shine like that. I say I shine so bright that I wake up the sun, the talented, gifted, and anointed one.
This poem is for San Francisco's Chinatown. It's for Pearl Gates, New Orleans, rebuilt after the storm surges. This is for Annandale, for K-Town, for Little Saigon and Eden Center, but for Ferguson and Chicago too, because our ancestors knew solidarity even if they couldn't pronounce it. They made a sound. We make a sound. Our chant.
But I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember your mama is a worrier and your papa is a warrior, and you are the girl with small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things, and
always keep on letting them see a superwoman, and you're such a damn good performer that they're starting to believe in unimaginable things, like it was your poem that saved a life today, that it was your energy that brightened a room today, that spine of steel and battery of a heart ain't broken and running on E. Yeah, they all love a superhero, but even Iron Man don't make it past infinity. Truth is, most days I just want to be a woman.
Because Muhammad sounds like planes crashing into towers, right? Sounds like a bomb threat, a gun cock clicked and shot, families broken, degenerate scum, a threat to the American way of life that's oh so precious. The home of the brave is controlled by fear and paranoia. Can't swallow anything that's not convenient, but my name is Muhammad, and it bears on its back the people that came before it. Praise.
And our way is spitting poems again. Hoping Willie Nelson will become my friend. The life I love is where a pandemic has an end. And I'm so happy to be on these poems again. And I'm so happy to be on this stage again. And I'm so happy to be here with you again. I want y'all.
All right, well, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. I certainly did. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I forgot to mention that I've reacted to nearly every poem I showcased during this lesson. So if you're interested in seeing what my thoughts were on them, check out my reaction playlist. I'm sure you're gonna like it. I'm actually thinking about making more in-depth videos covering each stone and how best to use them in order to bolster your poetry. So if that's something you're interested in, hey, click that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified when the next video comes out. Again, this is KendrykYoungblood, and I'll catch y'all next time. Deuces. And if you enjoyed my incorporation of Marvel concepts into poetry, then you will definitely love this cinematic spoken word poem here, Thanos, the Mad Poet, by yours truly. Hope you enjoy.